Hi folks, Wooden Boat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Hooked on Wooden Boats weekly podcast episode number 73. I am your host, Dan Matson, aka Wooden Boat Dan. If he can't do it, nobody can. In fact, don't even try to do what I do, folks, because you'll never be successful. And this is the world's first podcast, fully 110% dedicated to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance of wooden vessels of all sizes and shapes and colors and ages and species of woods and finishes and designs and power methods and all that stuff. Welcome to the podcast today, folks. It's great to have you. If this is your first time, you're in for a real treat. Today's featured segment is an interview with Jim Metteer. I interviewed Jim a few weeks ago at his shop in Poulsbo, Washington, and had a great time. Jim's done a lot of boat building and restoration, including a lot of work on a classic 6-meter boat, racing sailboat, and also built his own cutter, 43-foot length overall cutter, finishing that in 1991. Still has that boat, Lumiere. So stick around for that interview. It's going to be a lot of fun. In fact, everything we do on this show is fun. I mean, this is all about having fun with wooden boats. So if that's what you're looking for, you came to the right place today. No update on the canoe that I'm building this week. I just flat did not work on it. Part of that reason is we have our house in contract to sell. We're supposedly moving out by around the first part of March, no later than March 18th, possibly as soon as the 1st of March. So we're looking for another place. We're actually going to rent for a while because longer term we don't know where we want to live. Now that we're empty nesters, all the kids are gone, my wife and I just want to try something different for a while. So that's what we're up to. So we've been scrambling around looking for a rental home. We thought we'd found our dream home last weekend. Found a place right on the water on Puget Sound, a place called Warm Beach. House built in 1923. We got really excited about it. I mean, the living room was like 30 feet from the water. I could see my boat anchored in front of my house, waking up to gray whales, seagulls, Puget Sound salt water. But then some things about the house started to reveal themselves to us, that there were some real issues with this house after we had submitted our application. So we bailed on that, and we're still out there looking. So don't plan on coming to our house for barbecue on Puget Sound, okay? It probably ain't going to happen. Okay, this week's wooden boat hack number 16 of the week. I actually learned this from Jim Metteer, who I interviewed today. And the hack is this, that every day you should visit your boat building or refurbishing project. So that must sound kind of strange, but what I mean by that is, if you're building a boat or working on a boat, if you physically go to the boat every day, you'll be, even if you don't feel like it, you'll be inspired to, at a minimum, at least think about what your next step on the project is. Maybe you'll get things a little bit organized, and maybe you'll dive in and actually do a little bit of work. 30 minutes worth of work every day adds up to a lot of time over a long period of time, and it can make a big difference. So instead of avoiding even looking at your project when you come home after work, you're tired, it's dark and wet out, walk out to your garage, go down to your barn, go to your shop, wherever it is, and look at your project, and you'll probably get inspired to do something which is a lot better than nothing. And of course, the best way to get something done is to start. So that is the tip of the week, is to go to your project on a daily basis. You'll get it done much faster, and you'll be inspired to work on it pretty much on a daily basis. Thanks for that tip, Jim. Really appreciate it. Last week I mentioned this, and I'd like to mention again that if you have a small classic boat to sell, contact Marty at the Island Boat Shop, and the email is marty@islandboatshop.com. Marty heads up the Pocket Yachters of Port Townsend, and they have a classified boat section that's totally free, and they pride themselves in matching up sellers and buyers for classic boats, and it's a totally free service like I mentioned before. If you want to check out their site, go to pocketyachters.com and click on the tab at the top that says Boats for Sale, and you can get more information, see what they've got, and contact Marty if you have an interest in that. Again, it's Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at islandboatshop.com. Thanks, Marty, for offering that free service. That's awesome. Something new on my website in the last few weeks is an index that I put together so it's easy to navigate around the website. So I would encourage you to check that out. If you go to hookedonwoodenboats.com, now that I've published 73, this is the 73rd episode today, I created an index. So if you go to the menu at the top of my page and you click on index, there's a table in there that gives you a list of each episode starting with number 1, tells you who's in the episode and a brief description of what it's about. So with this table, you can quickly scroll through, pick the episodes that you want to listen to. If you click on the number of the episode to the left, it's a hyperlink, so it takes you right to that page. And then, of course, you can listen from your computer or your smartphone, or you can download the MP3 file and listen to it later. So I would encourage you to check that out. Much easier to navigate around the site now with that in place. We're going to move on now to the interview with Jim Metteer of Poulsbo, Washington. I had a great time with Jim, so let's get her rolling here. Take it away, Jim. Okay, it is January 18th, 2013. I am with Jim Metteer on, we're not on Bainbridge Island, we're in Poulsbo, Washington.
Yes.
Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So Jim and I just met today for the first time, and I had gotten Jim's name from Wendy Hinman, and she says, you got to go see some of the stuff Jim is working on and talk to him about wooden boats. So we're in Jim's shop here, and there's some really fun boats here. Before we get into that, though, Jim, where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up pretty much all around the West Coast. Wherever a hydroelectric dam was being built, my father was probably involved in it. So we traveled in a trailer. We lived in a trailer, and until we arrived in Seattle in about 65, and went to school South Seattle.
Okay. Yeah. So did you do some boating as a kid?
Just a little bit. My dad had a power boat, and we played in a little bit. I'm not really. I never have, and I still don't really like the water. So I don't. I love being on the water and playing, but I don't get in it.
Oh, you don't like to get in it. You like to be on it, but not in it.
Yeah. But just a little bit of ski boat stuff. Again, inside the ski boat during my high school years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went to school in South Seattle somewhere?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tyee High.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of down by the airport.
Yeah,
that area.
right there.
Right. Yeah. So what did you do after high school, Jim?
After high school, I went directly into I guess kind of a little bit of a beginning into woodworking. And at a furniture company, local furniture company, and then shortly took over their finishing department and started doing surface coatings.
So what kind of furniture were they building?
They were building office furniture.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. In Seattle?
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So how'd you get interested in that?
I didn't really get interested in it. I just went looking for a job. I walked through the door. They were building incredible furniture, and I kind of pretty much lied to get in and get the job. And it took them about a day to figure out that this guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Really?
And, but they liked the fact that I wanted to work, so they put me to work, and
they kept you on.
Yeah, so I stayed about 3 years. Yeah.
So you eventually ended up in the coating division, so learning about finishes and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you learn at that point about finishes?
Boy, that's hard to say. I mean, I learned.
Were you guys using stain and clear finishes, or?
Oh my gosh, we were using a lot of advanced coatings, even curtain coating. Where we were dragging furniture through curtains with that are bleeding a coating onto it. But handwork too. Pastewood filling, the whole works. It was very high end furniture, and so really, it's hard to even remember what we did, and we still use some of those techniques and some of the things we do today. But I'm mostly a varnish guy today. So yeah.
So when did you get your first boat? That was your own boat.
I'm going to say about 19. Oh, I say about 1980. I bought a Thistle that was dying at Lachey.
Okay.
And
tell us what a Thistle is.
A Thistle is it's a 17-foot Sandy Douglas design planing boat, like a bigger version of an I-14.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was hull 1070.
Planing sailboat.
Yep. Yeah, and it's kind of a cold molded sloop rig boat. Yeah. And a lot of fun. Yeah. And so I took
Was that a wooden boat or glass?
Yeah.
It was wood.
Wood boat.
Yeah.
I think there's probably like 6,000 of those boats around.
Really?
Yeah.
So that was your first boat?
Yeah, that was my first boat.
So you sailed out of Lachey on Lake Washington?
I sailed on the south end of the lake.
Yeah.
Because I live south. So I sailed on the south end of the lake a little bit, and then I started sailing it out on the Puget Sound a little bit. Got myself in a little bit of trouble. But
did you really?
Yeah, I learned. When the Coast Guard picks you up, I figure you got yourself in a little bit of trouble.
You capsize it out there?
Yeah.
Really?
So, but we had done it successfully the week before, so we thought we could do it again the second week. So
really?
Yeah. But that was just no experience.
Were you able to get it back up and it was full of water or not?
Yeah, I was just upside down, and they just flipped me right side up and pumped it out. So it was an interesting experience. Yeah.
So interesting. I used to have a Sea Lark down at Lachey. That was probably 79, 80 around that time. A little bit later than that, but that's a cool spot. So you had the Thistle for a while.
Had the Thistle right up until I needed a motor for Lumiere. We'd already started building Lumiere. I started building Lumiere in '88.
Okay.
And so I started looking for a Volvo or something to put in that boat. And so one showed up, and another guy wanted a Thistle, so that was when it went away.
It went away, okay. So Lumiere is a boat that you still have that you built. It's a double-ended sailboat, wooden sailboat. Tell me about that designer and some of the details on that boat.
Yeah, I fell in love with the boat. Well, I fell in love with a boat called Vito Dumas in Port Townsend, and so the owner was not interested in selling the boat, and so I did a little homework on who Manuel Campos was from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and he was a gentleman who built these boats for people like Vito Dumas, the famous sailor, the Roaring Forties, the book, the Sailing Around the World in the Roaring Forties. And kind of proved that those boats were fairly capable of doing the job. And I also like the fact that he was in love with the recondite boats in Europe, the Scandinavian double-enders, the rescue boats. But he had to redesign the bottom of the boat to be a shallower boat because Buenos Aires had not been dredged yet. The U.S. had not been in there to put a military or a naval base in there. So he was designing them a little bit shallower. I liked double-enders at the time, and I wanted to sail around the world, and I also wanted to end up in Europe and travel the canals, and it was a shallower boat, and it was a little bit more effective to
So that's
travel.
a fixed keel boat?
Yeah,
what was the draft
keel,
on it?
5.5.
5.5, okay.
Yeah.
So that's pretty shallow. For what length of boat was it?
34 on deck and 48 overall with bowsprit and boomkin and all that.
Oh,
big
wow.
rig, nice
Wow.
big rig. So
Yeah.
they kind of like a big spoon.
Yeah. So you'd never built a boat before.
No,
So how did you think you could do that? Or maybe you didn't think that way.
I'm really no, I didn't. I just decided I was going to do it, and like I was telling you earlier, I read a book on how to build a wooden boat by Bud McIntosh, and I'm a fairly visual guy, and it seemed to come pretty natural, and it was 4.5 years of just awesome time.
Were you working another job while you were doing that?
Yeah, I owned a small restoration company in Kirkland that I had started just a couple of years before that. By the time I started building Lumiere, I had about 15, 20 employees. And, I could sneak around and get parts when I was out on the road and keep that part of it going during the day. And then I'd go to work every day I went to the boat. And my commitment was at least go look at the boat every day.
So your business was in Kirkland, but the boat was being built in
South Park.
Port Townsend.
In South Park.
Oh, in South Park.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I was thinking you launched in Port Townsend, but you built it in South Park,
Yeah, and
which is near Seattle. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, and Duwamish.
Yeah.
So and we launched the boat in '91.
Wow. So tell me about the construction of that boat.
Caravel planked. I mean, it's
Plank on frame.
yeah, very traditional. It's 1.25 inch Port Orford cedar from one log, which is kind of cool, and
Wow.
and then over oak frames, 2x2 oak frames, and then 1.5 inch solid teak deck, straight laid, Honduras mahogany cabin and interior, and pretty much that's it. Keel timber was a large dry piece of fir, 13 by 13, and then the boat is 24,000 pounds. Ballast is 8,600 pounds of lead that we melted out of 2 bathtubs with a little antimony in there to stiffen it up.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't even know what antimony is.
It's just it's something that has more memory.
Oh.
Lead will, if you dent it, it stays dented. So in order to kind of keep it from bruising too bad when you go aground or something like that.
Yeah. Right. So that was your first boat that you ever built? Well, that's awesome to build a big boat like that.
Yeah, it was fun.
Big seaworthy boat. So you built that over a 4.5 year period, launched it in '91. Then did you make it around the world, or
I didn't.
To Europe or anything?
No.
Okay.
Parts of life fell apart, so I moved different directions, and then got involved in a environmental project with a friend here in Poulsbo, and so we explored that, and that didn't really pan out very well. So I had married, had a new wife, and we decided, why don't you build boats? And so that's what we did. So we met with a friend who we're standing in his shed now, who was a very dear friend of Roy Jackson's and Tom Pryor. And Tom and I just we had the respect of that we had both built boats, and so he said, "Sure, if you want to build boats in here, I'll rent you the barn." So we kind of made an agreement, and I rented the barn and helped him live his last years out in the old farmhouse here, and when he passed on, we took the property over.
Wow.
So
what year did you move here then, or start working on the boats here, I guess?
Oh, that would be just about 2000.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and then I had a friend who had already said, "Look, you need to find a place to build a boat. I'll either build you a place, and you can restore my boat in return for building you a place to set up your shack." And so that's how I got motivated, found Tom's place. So we started renting Tom's place, and we brought Puff, Friendship Sloop, in that Earl Wakefield had built, and it never had an interior in it, and had kind of fell apart for over the last few years, and so the owner spent some money on it, and we put it back together, and he's sailing it all the time now. And you see her at the Wooden Boat Show quite often.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's her name?
Puff.
Puff. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And at this and during
so that was your first project here.
First project here. Yeah.
Is that a big project, long project, or
no? It was probably about a 2-year project. The owner was doing a lot of his own work. He was doing a lot of the systems work and that sort of thing.
I see.
And at the same time, we had, or during that time, we brought Focus into the shop, which is an international 6-meter.
Okay.
And started that restoration at the same time.
And is that your boat?
It is
Focus.
our boat, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the boat was gifted to us from a family on Bainbridge Island. And I had been racing 6 meters for about 4 years on a boat called Hanko and a couple other boats. And we're gifted this boat, and so we started restoring it, and it's been a great project.
Yeah. What year did you get that boat then?
Probably 91, 92, right in there.
So 6 meter is a racing class?
Mm-hmm. It's like a 12 meter.
Okay.
It's about half the size of a 12 meter. Not quite. They range between 33 to about 40 feet.
The 6 meters do?
Yeah.
So if I understand it correctly, there's some kind of a mathematical formula you have to go through, and
exactly.
the end result has to be 6 meters or less,
right,
for the boat to qualify.
Yeah, and what that does is it brings the boats all into the same measurement. Some boats actually take a penalty, but once they have had reduction in sail area, something to make them measure, they use their water line differently than they do sail area. So the boats can be quite different. I mean, you can have a 33 foot 6 meter.
So what are some of the factors that go into that?
Well, I think a lot of it's just and I'm not really an expert on this. I'm a classic 6 meter sailor, and I understand why classic 6 meters do what they do to a certain degree, and why the modern generation of 6 meters do what they do.
I see.
The big difference is that from the classic to the modern, the rudder is separated from the keel, and you get a skeg rudder.
Oh,
that's a big separation, and they don't use overhangs to increase their water line like classics do. So that's probably the key thing.
Main thing.
Yeah.
So the boat here, I'm sorry, what was the name again?
Focus 3.
Focus 3.
Yeah.
The boat was built what year originally?
Built in 47, I believe launched in 48.
Where at? Where was it built?
Fredrikstad, Norway, by Bjorn Os.
Okay.
Yeah. And she was built with a sister ship that's in New York, Elizabeth 10. And they competed, and I don't know all the circumstances of why Focus didn't get to the Worlds, but she didn't. To the Olympics.
The Olympics.
Yeah.
So she was supposed to be in the 52 Olympics.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she never made it to the Olympics. So, as far as I know, in the history that I know,
Yeah.
I have some contact with the grandson of the gentleman that had her built.
Yeah.
But not much.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So she was a gift to you, basically just the hull, and there wasn't really much else to her.
No, and there's not much to these boats. There's the hull, deck, and your rig and sails, and that's about what's there. And a lot of the original hardware couldn't be used, and we put new rod rigging on it and updated the boat quite a bit.
So what is rod rigging?
Rod is just not wire; it's solid steel.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
as
okay.
opposed, and most modern boats use rod rigging today.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just stiffer and I think it more accurately tuned. Yeah.
That's for the stays and all that type of thing. Yeah. Okay. So you completely restored her over several years then?
Yeah, I think about 3 years. It took
3 years.
About 3 years.
And
that
then
was
you raced her
part-time
out here in this area?
We raced her in 2008 with a lot of difficulties. Had lots of issues with where our mast was positioned, and I hadn't figured that out yet, and my new crew was way ahead of me on what we needed to do, but it was hard to do on '08.
Did you have to reposition the mast in the boat?
Well, change the angle, change the rake on the mast, and a little bit, move it a bit forward, and then we relaunched with the new mast configuration that we did, and then we raced '09 here locally. And with a lot of help from the Corinthian Yacht Club in Seattle, they did a lot of special, extra starts instead of longer races, so that we could get more starting time in before we left to go back to Newport, Rhode Island
for the Worlds.
For the Worlds, in September. So,
So you told me earlier, but just for those listening, tell us about your experience at the Worlds.
Well, we first sailed when we got back there. Well, once we got back there, we raced the North Americans on a Saturday and a Sunday, and it's actually on Sunday morning we have a collision, and we're hit by a boat that's coming on a port tack. We're in, fairly for a 6 meter. 20 knots to 25 knots of winds is a lot of wind, and and conditions were not. They were difficult conditions, and these boats are blanketed on one side by their sail area, and so you've got to have somebody ducking and looking. And we had just made a tack, and so we were getting set up and getting our boat speed back up, and it was probably getting close to looking, and when we heard a boat come through our shrouds, and their bow is long and pointy like all 6 meters, or all classic 6 meters, and penetrated about the center of our deck, and traveled up through
about a 90-degree angle to your boat.
Pretty much, yeah, and tore about a 3-foot hole through the deck till it stopped on the clamp, and so that was our second day at North Americans, and we were, after about 3 years of preparation, we needed to get back to the dock and do some repairs.
Yeah. So you went back and did a temporary repair, and got out and raced.
Yep. Yeah. We had a great time, and the crew, we did well. We were up in the top third of the fleet, and under the circumstances, it was a great experience. Yeah.
Do you have to qualify for the Worlds?
No, I think you just gotta
be there. Participate, follow the rules and all that.
The Worlds are coming. The 6 meter Worlds are coming to Vancouver in 2017 in
British Columbia.
Yeah, and we're building. The fleet is building right now. Almost every 2 months, a new boat is being established. So it's going to be a pretty
around this area.
Yes.
Who's building these boats, Jim?
Well, not building them. We're building the fleet, I should say. Because most of these boats, if you're going to build a 6 meter, you're going to have to build a modern 6 meter or new design. Pretty strict about whether you can build a classic. You either have to have a ballast from an old classic, and the lines to put her back in.
You can't build a new classic.
No, there have been a few done, and there's a lot of controversy around it, and it may be that in order to keep the classic fleet alive in a bigger way, they may start to be a little bit more lenient. I don't know. There's a lot of discussion. You go to Puget Sound 6 Meter Association's website, and you'll find out all kinds of information about 6 meters. Yeah.
So what's the status of your boat now, of Puff?
A Focus?
Focus,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
I'm getting the names messed up here.
I do too. Well, Focus is, first time in the water after 2-year repair, after the 2009 last year. So we've got some residual issues that are hanging around the boat, which are frustrating. But boat sailed fairly well. We won some races, and so we'll be back out and doing it this year. Yeah.
What length are the races typically? Are they all kinds of?
Well, they shorten and lengthen it, but it's buoy racing. You know.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, windward lured and
Out in Puget Sound here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we were sailing in Port Ludlow and Port Townsend. We'll be sailing in British Columbia this year, and hopefully out here there'll be a good showing at Nude. Mm-hmm. So that'll be fun.
What is that?
Nude National Offshore One Design.
Okay.
Sperry puts it on. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's our.
It's not related to the nudist colonies.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I always feel funny when I wear my T-shirts. Yeah. Nobody wants to see us that way, anyways. You know, we're sailors, so. But
not bodybuilders.
No,
right?
No, we're not. No.
So you've got her in the shop here, and then do you own any other boats? So you've got that boat, and you've got
Lumiere.
Lumiere, which is in Poulsbo.
Right. Yeah. Yep. No, I don't. Not of any. I have I think hull number 15, an International 14, that is probably really a classic boat. Now I would love to find a home for that boat. If somebody's out there looking for a beautiful International 14, one of the originals, the original mast, the whole works.
Really?
Yeah, it's a classic. And
is it a complete restoration project? Or?
Yeah, it's I'd call it a 40%. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's it's like a cold mold design.
Okay. And you've got a John Alden designed boat here too in your shop, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So tell me about that boat.
The Anna Kappa, and she's built in 1937. And we put a new deck on the boat. House has been rebuilt, and the boat was owned by Adam Henley for quite a few years, and he put in a new, breast hook, stem, and a lot of bottom end planks and that sort of thing. We have the boat gutted now and getting ready to put the cabin sole back in. It's going to get a solid teak interior, and that's going to be quite a boat when it's done.
Yeah, so that's not your boat. You're doing that for a customer?
That's owned by Dave and Janet Martin. Mm-hmm. And Dave is an avid racer and sailor, and this is their first big wood boat, so they're pretty excited about it.
So is this more of a cruising boat than a racer? Or?
Yeah, I'd say it's a cruising boat, but if you know Dave, it'll probably be trying to beat somebody.
Really?
Yeah, without a doubt. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, so you were telling me earlier about your other business where you make rescue boards. Wooden rescue boards. So tell me about that.
Well, that's just what I call a widget. It's something that we fell into. A friend of mine knew the owner of the product, and he was needing help, so we kind of stepped in to help him out, and he liked it. So we built a small manufacturing company that produces this board to. Which we sell now out to our distributors, and they're kind of all around the country. And we build the original and only wooden spinal recovery board, basically.
So this is for a water rescue where there's a spinal injury?
So any pool that's certified in the United States has to have a lifeguard on board, or on the deck, I should say. And they're trained to use this board to extract anybody that's hurt, neck injury, back injury, whatever. And that's basically designed to take the victim from the pool onto the deck. Oftentimes the board makes it to the hospital too. I'm not that versed with it. I'm more versed with its construction and what people are asking to do with the board next. How to improve it and make it a better product. And so and we've been doing that for about 8 years, and it's great to build something that's might sound kind of corny, but the idea that it's made here in the U.S. and
all wood.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Akume plywood.
Yeah,
and
Meranti stiffeners, we call them. They're runners. They're basically help the board stay flat and they also lift the board off the ground so a hand can get into the hand grips and pick a board up. So, yeah.
What is Meranti wood?
Meranti?
Yeah.
It's a mahogany.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And
where's it come from?
it's smelly. It's
Is
got
it?
a real potent smell to it, and it can be kind of, well, at least to me, I should say, it may
So
not
it's
be.
probably rot resistant if it smells.
I would imagine to a degree.
Yeah,
You know, I don't know
yeah.
that mahoganies are that great against rot, but
Yeah.
board basically lives its life outside of the water. So
Yeah.
that's
So who are some of
Yeah.
the companies buying these boards?
well, we have 7 distributors, and gosh, that goes from the lifeguard store to Recreonics.
But I mean, the end customer, who are some
Oh.
companies you were telling me earlier that are actually
Well,
using these in their pools?
Yeah, Disneyland, Great Wolf Lodge, YMCA, they use our board a lot. And then, of course, there's just anybody that wants the look of a wooden board and the performance. The performance of a wooden board is just, it just set the bar for all plastic boards. And plastic is just a different, has a different value in the water. And like I said earlier, I'm not a guy who really cares for the water, and yet I've got all these things going on around water. But that being said, I have watched this board being used by professionals, and I've had a lot of professionals at aquatic seminars and things that we go to show the board. Just how they've embraced the wood board because it's so efficient. It works so well. So
You're saying it has a zero buoyancy in water?
it actually is negative. It is not designed to float. It just has the right amount of volume. The way it penetrates the water and moves through the water is very smooth. It's not bulky. It's not waiting to be filled with water like a plastic board might be waiting to be filled in order to get it down and stay down. And so you need, the board needs to get it
needs to go under the victim.
Yeah, and it's really not designed to go into the pool other than to hang slanted at the edge of the pool. So it's hanging from the gutter on the pool, the very like the shear of the pool, the top edge, down to the bottom of the shallow end. The victim is brought to the board.
Oh, I see.
And
So they're
strapped
loaded
in.
that way from the gutter of the pool.
Right. So they're strapped in, and at that point, the lifeguard, usually EMT, will extract the board at that point. So that's how they do it.
Cool.
Yeah,
Very
I've
cool.
never seen it used. In a real situation.
Yeah.
So
Very cool. That's awesome. So back to wooden boats for a minute. What is it about woodworking and wooden boats that you like?
Well, I love creating. First of all, I think when I look at like a classic international 6-meter, and even this big boat Anacapa, if you start looking at the shape of the boat, it's sculpture, and I think somewhere in the back of my mind, I always wanted to be a sculptor. This is better because somebody's already created it. It's really beautiful. So when I'm involved in it, I try to just bring out little nuances that my eye says should be done. And I like wood. I'm a little bit more into aluminum than I have been because it's woodworking friendly. It's very similar. But it's not warm to your hand. It's just different, and that's what I love. And I love that glow of varnish, and I like the smell of the wood when you're cutting it, and it's kind of quiet. It's not noisy. Generally.
So varnish can be a difficult thing to do. It takes practice and patience and stuff. Any varnishing tips you'd give us today?
Don't shake the can. I mean, there are so many tips, and there's been so many people, and I actually think my varnishing skills are not as good as they were 10 years ago, unless I only have to varnish, but unfortunately I'm cutting wood and I'm varnishing in the same room.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not so bright, but we get good results.
Yeah, so, very cool.
Yeah.
So for somebody that's listening and maybe they're building their first wooden boat, what advice or tips would you give them?
Well, like I was saying earlier, I'm pretty impatient, and that's not I don't think that's a good match for wooden boat building. So the thing that I did, the two things I did in building Lumiere that I think were really key to the whole project for me was that I went to the project every day. The result of that was I know for sure half the time I went to see the boat, I wasn't going to work on it, but I actually did. I'd actually make a part because you just you get to thinking about that next part, and so that would happen. And for me, that was...
You just show up there and then something happens.
Just walk around it, look at it, contemplate what's next. But for me, it drew me right into it. Even though I was tired, I'd already put 10 hours in, and I had other things I needed to do and paperwork and all that kind of stuff. The other kind of the key thing was I created a scroll where I took a roll of paper and I wrote down what needed to be done next. I would write down everything that needed to be done next. So I have to build the stem, I have to build the breast hook, I have to build this part, I have to build that part. That could grow by 20 parts at a time. I'd look at this list and I might add 20 parts to that list. But I could only touch 3 of those, the top 3 parts on that list. I couldn't scratch one off until I'd done it. Now, if I had a part out, I had built a mold and I had a part out being cast, then I could skip number 3 and go to 4.
Okay, so you did them in order.
Right. So I see. Basically, I have a scroll that's kind of looks like
literally a roll of paper.
Yeah, that just continued on to another dowel. So it's kind of, it looks kind of Greek-like or something, But what's funny about it's about 20 feet long. It's really quite a history of the boat.
Do you still have that?
I do.
Really?
Yeah. So, but it's very interesting because it really controls keeping you from maybe being ADD or something. I don't know. Yeah. But that was a great thing for me. It worked really well.
How did you get that idea?
I don't really know.
You come up with it yourself?
I just started making a list, and then I thought, wow, I could really get out of control. That's what I think what it was. I started making this list, and I was basing it on this book that I was reading or referring to, and I realized, wow, I could really get out of control here. I could get ahead of myself and wish I hadn't. Mm-hmm. So that really worked well for me.
Wow.
I could see it working for any boat.
Great idea.
Especially
any size boat, really.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's much difference between a 10-foot boat and a 30-foot boat, really.
Yeah.
So
right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate your time today, Jim.
Sure.
Anything else you'd like to say to our listeners?
Man, I just, I don't particularly care if it's a wooden boat, a fiberglass boat, or aluminum boat. I mean, if you love a boat, I mean, these are the people I work for. I work for people who love their boat. I mean, if a guy walks in and he says, I love this boat, can you fix this? I mean, I do it. So I would say any boat you love, just pursue it. Have fun with it and enjoy it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so the other thing I just thought of, for anybody listening to this, tell me about your business with boats and what you do, and maybe somebody listening might contact you for a repair or a build or what.
Yeah, we do everything from, we're doing a teak sink for a boat in South Florida right now. We're doing a cockpit or cabin sole, custom moving tables around inside a boat in Kingston. We're building deck beams for a fishing boat right now, and we take 6 meters that have been 8 feet have been lopped off the back of the boat because at one point in time they thought it should be shorter, and we put a complete new counter back on the boat, and nobody knows it was gone.
Wow.
So anything. People come in and say, "Can you build this stainless part and polish it up and make it fit?" We can do that. We can.
Okay.
It's just about build anything you need. I'm not a great electrical guy, not a great systems guy, but when it comes to wood and getting a fair line, making a pretty boat, that's okay. What we like to do.
If somebody wants to get a hold of you, what's your the best way to do that?
Phone number.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your phone number?
360-440-2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Well, great. Well, thanks for your time today.
You bet.
Appreciate it. All right. Take care. Thanks, Jim, for taking the time to do the interview. It was really fun to meet you. And I also enjoyed meeting Lee, who, when I first arrived there, I went into her art studio right next to your boat shop. She offered me a cup of coffee, which I never refuse, and it was really, really, really good cup of coffee. And I drink probably 3 to 6 cups of coffee every day, have since I was 18, so that's about 40 years. I just don't run into coffee that's that good very often. So thanks for that, Lee. That was really cool. It was actually Pegasus French roast organic coffee, and I'm going to order some of that. But anyway, thanks again, Jim, for everything. And if you have a moment, folks, go to the website, hookedonwoodenboats.com/073. That'll take you to this episode, and you can see pictures of some of Jim's boats and the things that he's working on in his shop. So check it out when you get a chance. I would love it if you would connect with me, give me feedback about the show, ask questions, send pictures of your boats, and tell me about the projects you're working on. Give me feedback about recommendations that you have for me to improve the podcast, maybe even folks to interview. You can email me, dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. You can leave comments on my website. Each week when I publish a podcast on Thursday, I write show notes about the podcast, and I include pictures. At the bottom of the notes, there's a place for you to put comments on the website. You can also share the podcast with others. There's Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, LinkedIn buttons on each episode that you can click on and post to your Facebook page and so on. So I'd appreciate if you would do that if you get a chance. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest if you look for Wooden Boat Dan there. I also have one YouTube video, and if you look for Wooden Boat Dan on YouTube, you'll see a video there that I did with a gentleman in Seattle that's restoring an Ed Monk Senior bridge deck boat that's absolutely gorgeous, so check that out if you get a chance. If you'd like to support the show, go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/Amazon. That'll take you to Amazon's website, and if you order anything on the site, I get paid a little bit. Also, you can go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/JD. That stands for Jamestown Distributors. That will take you to their website where you can buy marine and boat building supplies. They have great prices. Fast shipping. I've ordered stuff there myself and been very happy with the service and the result. So check that out if you get a chance also. So there's probably some of you listening that have never built a wooden boat or own a wooden boat or been on a wooden boat. It's high time you get in the game and start doing something with wooden boats. It's really a blast. I would recommend you build a small wooden boat to start with. Maybe build a small canoe or kayak. Simplest way is to buy a kit. Build it from a kit. You can learn quickly. It's really fun to build your own boat and actually go out on the water and have it float and make it usable. And people give you compliments. It's a real sense of accomplishment. And wooden boats are just a blast. They're so cool. They're like objects that are alive. They have beautiful lines. They're easy to repair. They can be expensive to maintain if you have a bigger boat, but smaller boats aren't too bad. So anyway, get in the game. Go build a wooden boat. If you have questions about that, what you should build or how you should proceed or anything like that, shoot me an email, dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. But I'd love to hear your story. If you're just getting started, let me know how it goes. Do a project with your kids. That's another great way to do it. If you have kids at home still, They'd love to build something with you. Go out in the garage and build a little 8-foot pram or something. You can do it in a few weekends, make it simple, and you won't regret it. Well, thanks for tuning in today, folks. It's been great to have you. Keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. Wooden Boat Dan, over and out. Have a great week. God bless.